Charlotte Adelgonde Elisabeth Marie Wilhelmine, January 23, 1896, July 9, 1985, reigned as Grand Duchess of Luxembourg from January 14, 1919 until her abdication on November 12, 1964. She acceded to the throne on January 14, 1919 following the abdication of her sister, Marie Adelaide, due to political pressure over Marie Adelaide's role during the German occupation of Luxembourg during World War I. A referendum retained the monarchy with Charlotte as Grand Duchess. She married Prince Felix of Bourbon-Parma on November 6, 1919. They had 6 children. Following the 1940 German invasion of Luxembourg during World War II, Charlotte went into exile, first in France, then Portugal, Great Britain, and North America. While in Britain, she made broadcasts to the people of Luxembourg. She returned to Luxembourg in April 1945. She abdicated in 1964, and was succeeded by her son Jean. Charlotte died from cancer on July 9, 1985. She was the last agnatic member of the House of Nassau. She was the last personal recipient of the Golden Rose, and since her death there are no living personal recipients of that honor, which in modern times has been awarded only to churches and shrines. Born in Berg Castle, Charlotte of Nassau-Weilburg, Princess of Luxembourg, was the second daughter of Grand Duke William IV and his wife, Marie Anne of Portugal. Her older sister, Marie Adelaide, had succeeded their father. However, Marie Adelaide's actions had become controversial, and she was seen as friendly to the German occupation of Luxembourg during World War I. There were calls in Parliament for her abdication, and she was forced to abdicate on January 14, 1919. Luxembourg adopted a new constitution that year. In a referendum on September 28, 1919, 77.8% of the Luxembourgish people voted for the continuation of the monarchy with Grand Duchess Charlotte as head of state. However, in the new constitution, the powers of the monarch were severely restricted. By 1935, Charlotte had sold her German properties, the former residential palaces of the Dukes of Nassau, Biebrich Palace, and Schloss Weilburg, to the state of Prussia. During World War II, the Grand Ducal family left Luxembourg shortly before the arrival of Nazi troops. Luxembourg's neutrality was violated on May 9, 1940, while the Grand Duchess and her family were in residence at Colmar-Berg. That day she called an extraordinary meeting of her leading ministers, and they all decided to place themselves under the protection of France, described by the Grand Duchess as a difficult but necessary decision. Initially the family took up residence at the Château de Montastruc in southwestern France, but the rapid advance of the German forces into France followed by French capitulation the next month caused the French government to refuse any guarantee of security to the exiled Luxembourg government. Permission was received to cross Spain provided they did not stop en route, and the Grand Duchess with her ministers moved on to Portugal. The Germans proposed to restore the Grand Duchess to her functions, but Charlotte refused, mindful of her sister's experiences of remaining in Luxembourg under German occupation during the First World War. By August 29, 1940, Grand Duchess Charlotte was in London, where she began to make supportive broadcasts to her homeland using the BBC. Later she traveled to the United States and to Canada. Her children continued their schooling in Montreal, while she had several meetings with President Roosevelt, who encouraged her itinerant campaigning across the country in support of his own opposition to isolationism, which was a powerful political current until the Pearl Harbor attacks. In the meantime, Luxembourg, along with the adjacent French Moselle department, found itself integrated into an expanded Germany under the name Heiman's Reich, which left Luxembourgers required to speak German and liable for conscription into the German army. In 1943, Grand Duchess Charlotte and the Luxembourg government established themselves in London. Her broadcasts became a more regular feature of the BBC schedules, establishing her as a focus for the resistance movements in Luxembourg. The Grand Ducal family went to North America in exile, settling first on the Marjorie Merriweather Post estate in Brookville, Long Island, and then in Montreal. the Grand Duchess visited Washington, D.C. and made a goodwill tour of the U.S. to keep the profile of Luxembourg high in the eyes of the Allies. Charlotte's younger sister Antonia and brother-in-law Ruprecht, Crown Prince of Bavaria, were exiled from Germany in 1939. In 1944, living now in Hungary, Crown Princess Antonia was captured when the Germans invaded Hungary and found herself deported to the concentration camp at Dachau, being later transferred to Flossenburg where she survived torture but only with her health badly impaired. Meanwhile, from 1942 Grand Duchess Charlotte's eldest son, Jean, served as a volunteer in the British Army's Irish Guards, after the war becoming its honorary colonel-in-chief, 1984 to 2000. In the years after the war, Charlotte showed a lot of public activity which contributed to raising Luxembourg's profile on the international stage, by hosting visits from foreign heads of state and other dignitaries, such as Eleanor Roosevelt, 1950, Queen Juliana of the Netherlands, 1951, René Coty, 1957, King Baudouin of Belgium, 1959, King Bhumibol of Thailand, 1961, and King Olav V of Norway, 1964. Likewise, she visited Pope Pius XII, 1950, Charles de Gaulle, 1961, and John F. Kennedy, 1963. In 1951 Charlotte and her Prime Minister Pierre Dupont by decree admitted into the nobility of Luxembourg 3 Swedish relatives who were not allowed to use their birth titles in Sweden. They were then named as Sigvard Prince Bernadotte, Carl Johan Prince Bernadotte and Lennart Prince Bernadotte, and also, with their legitimate descendants, were given the hereditary titles of Counts and Countesses of Visborg there. On November 12, 1964, she abdicated in favor of her son Jean, who then reigned until his abdication in 2000. Charlotte died at Schloss Fischbach on July 9, 1985, from cancer. She was interred in the ducal crypt of the Notre Dame Cathedral in the city of Luxembourg. A statue of the Grand Duchess is in Place Clairefontaine in the city of Luxembourg. Thanks for watching HerStory channel. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe our channel.